Welcome into the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, John McKechnie, joined as always by Mario Puig. We got a week till the draft. We got a lot to get into. We got Mario's 2-round mock to dig into and plenty of wide receiver drama around the league to dig into as well. Let's start the show. Welcome back in. It's the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. We are 8 days away from the first round of the NFL Draft. I'm your host, John McKechnie, joined by Mario Puig. Before we get into the draft and really dig in with both feet here, because we got Mario's 2-round mock to really chew on, we got an interesting amount of wide receiver drama as some voluntary workouts are starting up across the league. The most recent one is Kadarius Toney. We've also got some Deebo Samuel drama. Apparently, we got some A.J. Brown drama. Apparently, a little bit of Deontay Johnson as well. But let's kick things off with Kadarius Toney. Mario, it seems like extremely a really high profile team like the Giants. Obviously the New York media, they're going to make a huge deal out of these sort of things, but at the same time, Toney not showing up, new coaching staff, a pretty invisible rookie season, a lot of it of course due to nagging injuries, and he was impressive when he did play. But what in your mind is going on with this Toney situation with the Giants?
I really don't know. It could just be as simple. He's kind of eccentric, and maybe this kind of blows over because maybe it's a case of him kind of being misunderstood as insubordinate, but maybe in his mind he doesn't see it that way, and he doesn't realize how this looks or like how some people might be taking it. He seemed pretty prepared to play last year, as much as he seemed to get nowhere with Joe Judge. Like, they just seemed to feud the entire time. Even when things were going well, it didn't really seem like Judge was excited to see it. He was more just like, okay, I guess we got to play Toney now. I didn't want to, but I guess we have to. And it never really seemed to get any better than that. So on the one hand, maybe Toney is kind of like responsible for that, but maybe not. Joe Judge didn't seem particularly well liked. So maybe Toney's just a little eccentric and just kind of needs to be handled the way some kind of special student or something, who's just like, they just need this one accommodation and otherwise they're fine. But it's also possible that he's just kind of got some work ethic issues or something, and I have no idea how to call it. The one thing I think we can give him credit for again is that when he did get put on the field last year, even though Judge didn't really want him to, he did have that really big game against Dallas and had a couple other good moments. So if he wasn't practicing the right way, it would have been really hard to tell based on the way he was playing.
No, that's a good point. I guess just like in the broader context of the other wide receiver drama, he has so much less track record to point to be, a proverbial diva. And again, this could be a misunderstanding on all sides, and what's being reported might not actually be accurate. And, this is just voluntary stuff. It's not like he's missing like the mandatory stuff that is going to go on a little bit later in this offseason. But it does strike me as weird for someone who had as kind of rocky of a rookie season as Toney did, and coming into a new coaching staff and everything, to kind of get off on the wrong foot on purpose.
Yeah, I guess, again, it would almost kind of come down to what he thought he was doing. Like, if he understood it as the team wants me here, but I'm not going to go because, I want to, that would not be so great, perhaps. But if it's also possible he's just kind of like a, head in the clouds kind of person or something, and didn't really realize the way it would be taken or something.
Regardless, I think that our collective antenna are up about the Toney in the Giants situation.
I think they're committed to him. Like, they don't really have much option. Yeah, they don't have much option to, like, other than just trying to stick with him anyway. So I think in the meantime it's like moot. Whatever way this story goes, unless it's not indicating some horrible work ethic thing, which it seems like a long shot. I think it'll kind of just blow over as long as it's an isolated incident.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's a good way of putting it there. Got a little bit of breaking news here, Mario. So Jeff Darlington tweets out breaking news. I just spoke to wide receiver Debo Samuel, and he told me that he asked the 49ers to trade him. So that dovetails
Wow.
with these recent developments. This feels like it's been something that's kind of out of nowhere. I mean, Samuel's been such an integral part of the 49ers these last few years. He's, just really the engine of that offense in a way that most receivers wouldn't be. I don't know if there's another system out there that could accommodate him the same way that the Kyle Shanahan would, or like get the most out of him. But nonetheless, it feels like the marriage between Debo and the Niners is going down the tubes.
Man, yeah, I did not realize it was this far along. Is there some kind of like bigger story that's been hinted? Like, has there been any like little drip about like, oh, Debo actually got mad back on whatever week 5 when something happened and he just never really got over it. Like, was he like feuding with Shanahan or something, or is it just a money thing?
Adding on to the Darlington tweet, he says, and Darlington says, he did not want to discuss specific reasons behind his request, but he has indeed let the 49ers know his desire to leave the organization.
Jeez. All right. Yeah, doing mock drafts this year is going to be a lot of fun when that first pick goes up, and not long afterward we hear about Debo and I don't know, why not 2 or 3 other guys getting traded. I don't know what's going on, man. It's hard for me to think through, especially at this point in the offseason. Like, it would have been different if it was before free agency. Teams don't have quite as much budget left as they did, a couple months ago. So I guess a player like Samuel, teams will probably be willing to trade from far in the future, like reaching into future picks to get it done. So he should have a lively market either way, I guess. But there might be like just like a couple fewer teams than could have been in on the bidding in previous point, maybe. So as much as the Shanahan scheme in some ways put Debo in his best positions, to really amplify his strengths in his skill set, I don't think he's dependent on that system. And I think you can make other ways to amplify those skills, specifically the run after the catch ability. I don't think you need the Shanahan system to do that. And if anything, I thought Shanahan was maybe indulging a little too much the idea of putting up Debo Samuel's body as like sacrifice basically for the whole offense. And if that informed part of Samuel's outlook on this, then that would make plenty of sense to me. It's like, hey, they're trying to hurt my earnings so that this coach can get an extension. So if
at the same time,
that,
Debo seemed pretty happy with it. He like referred to
right.
himself as a wide back.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's his competitiveness. Like he's the kind of guy who's like, even if he's mad at the team, he's always going to play 110%. But like, if they aren't willing to make him, I don't know, the highest paid receiver in the league, maybe more, like they might need some hazard pay kind of logic in there if they want to keep using him that way. And maybe they're just like, oh no, there's no way. We're not paying you, $2 million more a year than Tyreek Hill. No way, buddy. And it's like, okay, well, trade me. Like, that would make sense. If you want to keep using me like a running back, you got to give me some hazard pay.
I mean, that's a good counter for
which
sure.
Running backs also need, but that's a separate subject.
But that pod's coming on our Patreon a little bit later this month. But in your mind, if things are moving in this direction, which they seem to be at a pretty rapid pace, I imagine that if things don't calm down, then I imagine Debo's on the move by draft night.
Yeah.
Who do you think would be in on those sweepstakes?
Packers. I don't think they want to trade them to the Packers, though. I guess they're going to want to trade them to the AFC. And that's another thing, too. It's like how, man, depending on how stubborn, short-sighted, petty, etc., Shanahan and Lynch might be, this could get ugly because, again, like teams have already allocated some budget toward the wide receiver position, and in a couple teams' cases, first-round pick trades, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams. Those are teams that could have been interested in trading for Samuel. Now they can't. Maybe the Jets, I guess. They have that 10th pick, and it's possible, like in the mock that I did, actually, they by the 10th pick, receiver had already been in that scenario hacked away more than maybe some people expect. And I could just be wrong to think that many receivers go that early. But if they did, which is to say, if Garrett Wilson and Jameson Williams are off the board by the 7th pick, then trading that 10th pick for Deebo Samuel makes a ton of sense, especially then if you're the Jets, because their other option at that point is basically like maybe Chris Olave or Drake London or something like that, which is not as exciting. It's not as like workhorse, especially immediate workhorse receiver, the way Deebo Samuel could be.
So you mentioned earlier, the complications with the timeline here, and how most teams have kind of done their free agent spending, and that their cap is pretty much situated to accommodate the rookie class, and maybe a handful of depth veteran type of signings. But with Deebo, you kind of have to imagine that there's going to need to be a contract extension.
Oh
ready to
yeah,
roll.
and I think
So,
the Jets would be willing to do that. Maybe the Packers don't really have the cap space to do that. I'm not sure. But yeah, I guess I didn't really complete the thought before. But if Shanahan's going to be stubborn about this and be like, "Oh, we're not going to take what the market offers us. We're only going to trade him if we get a certain amount that we say we need," that would be concerning, I guess, because it's like you're done. You got to move him. You take what the market can give you, or you sabotage yourself and Deebo Samuel. And it's like, I guess I could kind of imagine Shanahan doing that. He doesn't. He's smart and things like that, but I don't know if his judgment is all that great. And especially with personnel, his judgment has not been so great. And it seems like he's having some issues with more and more players having disciplinary flare ups with him. So I hope he lets Deebo Samuel go, even if it is to the Jets, because I don't want him being a holdout instead.
Yeah, this is really an added layer to this time of year that is already like really like kind of hectic and crazy, trying to sort the draft out, and now with potential high impact players that are already in the league potentially on the move, that just really adds another layer. Moving to another receiver. We won't keep the receiver soap opera going too much longer. We'll get into the draft stuff here momentarily. But any intel on the Deontay Johnson dealio with Pittsburgh?
Yeah, sorry, that might have actually been like a bit of a media, I don't know, hypothesis rather than like a report, or at least once the thing came out about him wanting a new contract, I guess he issued a pretty swift comment that he like never issued any demands or ultimatums or whatever to the Steelers, but he would make sense in that category too, of a receiver who's accomplished enough that it's reasonable for him to demand an extension. And he's going to be 26 this year, so he probably wants like a 4-year extension right now so that he can hopefully get another 4-year well-paid deal toward the end of that, as opposed to waiting a little bit too long, taking his prime window past his market access a little bit, and missing some earnings as a result. So I kind of just expect that one to blow over because I expect the Steelers to just pay him. So depending on what his demands are anyway, I would expect the Steelers to just try to get that one done, and maybe we never really hear about it again.
Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. And Deontay has done well by the Steelers. Given where he was selected in the draft, I think and how he's produced to this point in his career, it makes sense to go ahead and on both sides get a deal done, because I think if you're the Steelers, you've already like extrapolated so much value from where you selected him. He's earned much more than what he's gotten paid, essentially.
Yeah,
So
he's just going to cost more in a year or two anyway. So teams have to definitely rethink that whole like, well, you're under contract, you have to report thing. If only just to save themselves money. It's just a pay him before he hits the open market, so that you don't have to listen to people complain about the Christian Kirk contract or whatever the alternative is.
right, exactly, and this is obviously short term, and they'll eventually settle on a quarterback that they're paying. But right now, they don't have to pay $25 million for a quarterback.
Right. Yeah. So they're also very thin at receiver, especially if Tomlin is kind of sick of Claypool, which I think might still be that's just me speculating. I mean, Tomlin he was pulling his playing time for Ray McLeod. That's serious. That's hatred, I think, even. So yeah. So if they're on thin ice with Claypool, then they can't afford to get cute with Deontay Johnson's contract.
So you're saying, and here's me weaving in another NFL storyline.
God, that
Miles
would be
Boykin, not
amazing.
the
Yeah.
answer.
Miles Boykin, not the answer. Yeah, I do think Claypool is good though. I think people kind of lump them together as prospects at Notre Dame, but I think Claypool was clearly different. He might also be like a problem head case. I don't know. I don't know what the latest is there. Tomlin is a pretty serious guy, and he seemed pretty fed up. So at once you can imagine Tomlin being a bit strict, but also like you don't. If you're the kind of player who's always on the wrong side of Tomlin, you're probably not on winning teams. So yeah, Claypool could be on the move too. I mean, I can't really rule that one out.
Yeah, I mean, I hope I'm not misattributing it, but like, wasn't there something about music at practice this past season where there's a little bit of tension there?
I don't actually know that one, but yeah, there was that personal foul or whatever that he got in that one game, or when they were like trying to tie it up or get a
Oh
game-winning
yeah,
drive or
yes.
something.
He like spiked the ball or something.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was, but Tomlin had steam blowing out of his ears, and then they started yanking his playing time for Ray McLeod. That's saying we'd rather have 10 players on the field than have 11 with Claypool. Like that's pretty serious.
Yeah, no, that well said there when it comes to the receiver rotation and playing one Ray McLeod over one Chase Claypool, who has pretty much done nothing but produce from the jump in his
Yeah.
career. Let's go ahead. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about the draft. That's a thing apparently that's coming up 8 days from now. So you and I pretty interested in it. You just posted a 2-round mock yesterday. I will have one out later this week, and I will also have another one next week as well. Let's kind of run through your top 5 here, and really the top 10, because things get pretty wild in your mock with some trades and very interesting from a fantasy perspective as well. But starting things off at 1. What led you to going Aiden Hutchinson for the Jags? Kind of switching over from the offensive line, or you had established that the Jags probably aren't going offensive line, and the Vegas odds seem to back you up. Where Aiden Hutchinson like minus 200 to go first, Trayvon Walker plus 200, and then Ekwonu and Evan Neal both plus 1,600. That type of deal. So the market seems to agree with you there, but I think it's not quite 50-50 between Hutchinson and Walker. I wouldn't be shocked if it is Walker.
No.
I also don't think that would be a great landing spot for him, but I digress. But what led you to Hutch over Walker?
It seems at best a coin flip, actually. So I know you're saying it's maybe not 50-50. It might not be, but it also might be 50-50. It might not even be 50-50 in the sense that Walker by now might really be the pick. It seems like the smoke is only building up toward that direction, actually. It seems like with each day, even Hutchinson is maybe losing a little bit of what was, previously assumed pretty strong grip on that first pick there. I don't know what all is in play, and I don't know what any consideration or probability is. I have no idea what Balky or whoever else is considering, or if they've already made up their minds. I have no idea. But the public consensus is that Hutchinson should be the first pick. And I had previously reasoned, including in this mock, I reasoned, well, Balky knows that he's on the hot seat. He knows he's got, maybe he gets fired in like a year no matter what he does. And for sure, a good way to get fired is to blow this first overall pick. And when the public and kind of like the scouting or NFL media community anyway all regard Hutchinson as this approved pick, then he could reason that, well, if I take Hutchinson and he's no good, then people can't blame me. Maybe he would make the pick for that reason, even if he prefers Walker. But it's looking more and more like Balky might just prefer Walker and be willing to make the pick anyway. So I don't know which way it's headed. I think Walker would actually be a fine pick, and like I was saying before, like I am not prone to sympathy for Trent Baalke, so I'm not trying to like defend him. I'm saying like Walker would be a fine pick, and let's fire him anyway. But the public will be kind of outraged, I think, if they take Walker, and it seems like at least it's more plausible than it was, a couple weeks ago, certainly.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel like taking Hutchinson would be a direct quitting on K'Lavon Chaisson. Is that warranted?
Oh yeah, he's not good.
Okay, I mean, I didn't think so.
Not gonna do anything.
But
that
I wasn't sure.
That legend of K'Lavon Chaisson was so weird. You remember that? How they were just like, hey, he's gonna be the next freak edge rusher. He's like Aldon Smith. He's got and the thing about Aldon Smith is like he's got a lot of reach. He's like a rangy, him and Chandler Jones are kind of like similar kinds of edge rushers. And Chaisson turned out to be like 6'2" with like 10th percentile arms, and then people were just still, but he's still Aldon Smith. It's fine. And it turned out actually he is just like too short and doesn't have the range or athleticism to be an edge rusher. And if anything, it seems like they're trying to move him to inside linebacker. So that tells you how well it's going.
Yeah, and they already signed Foye this offseason too, right? So, I mean,
Chaisson might not make the team. He might just be kind of like out of the league within like 18 months.
Okay, all right. Then I think with that in mind, then Hutchinson, there's less of like a logistical barrier to him, having that immediate fit.
He would play 3 downs for sure. Walker would too.
Sure.
I think Walker. I actually think he's going to be pretty insane. I don't know why people are so low on him. I mean, I get the ostensible reason, the numbers aren't there, but when you're on a defense that has like 8 other first round picks, it should be harder to accumulate stats, right? Because they're fighting for the same stats as you. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That defense was like as good as pretty much any in college football history, and he's total like Daniil Hunter, Ezekiel Ansah level athlete. I think he's going to be pretty awesome, and I do prefer him over Hutchinson, actually. I don't think either of them are an ideal first overall pick. Ideally, they would just trade back and take whoever really is left. But, I'm much higher on Walker than most people, which is kind of funny. I thought I would hate whatever Baalke was going to do.
Yeah, I think with Walker, people complain that he didn't really break out until his junior year. But I think to your point, Georgia had under Kirby Smart has always had like that deep front seven, that deep defensive line rotation. I mean, in 2020, they had, guys like Jermaine Johnson, Adam Anderson, like not the exact same position, but there's only so many bodies out there. And they had, other veteran guys in that front seven. So it wasn't going to be easy for Walker to just like go in there and play a zillion snaps every single year. So, I mean, that obviously when he got the opportunity, he did pretty well for himself.
Yeah, for me, Walker it checks out pretty cleanly, actually, because I think his production is fine. Like he was 1 sack away from tying for the team lead on that team, playing by Ojulari 2 years ago. So he's keeping up with these guys. He's just not taking over the game, which if he took over the games, we wouldn't know of these other players as the players that they are. They'd be like the guys who didn't do as much because Trayvon Walker took all the, plays away from them. So I think it's much more likely that all of them are good, like that we're just, dealing with another whatever, like an even better version of that old Miami defense or whatever. It's like you got the 2 good linebackers and the corners are way better. And then, the pass rushers in this case are even better. And Jordan Davis too. It's just like there's just so much talent. Like, how do you expect a guy to even get to 12 sacks on a defense like that? Like Ezekiel Ansah at BYU had something like half the number of sacks as Kyle Van Noy on the same defense, and it barely mattered because he got to the NFL and he's such a freak athlete. You don't even need to be that good to be effective when you're that athletic. So I think that especially when you got like, it seems like there's a motor there with Walker. He seems like he's a hard worker who plays hard. When you have tools like that and you're a high motor guy, it'll figure itself out. Like it just will. For him to fail, he basically needs to have a screw loose or just not be a serious worker or something.
Yeah, I don't believe that to be the case with him. And yeah, stacked defense last year, and one of the better players on it like isn't even draft eligible. Jalen Carter, another defensive lineman. He's scary. But let's move on. Enough Georgia talk from me. Apologies to the listening audience. I know they're tired of it. But there's going to be.
I think I have like 8 Georgia players in the first 2 rounds of this, or maybe like 10. I don't know.
I keep thinking of like that Simpsons clip where Homer notes that like something tastes different with his Duff, and then it cuts over to the Duff factory, and there's just a bunch of dogs swimming around in like the beer vat, and it's like needs more dog. So that's just like my mantra for the mock. There's just going to be a need for more dogs.
Yeah, it's except for Devontae Wyatt, apparently it seems like there's bad news on him, and
that's verified.
I regret even putting him in the second round of this mock to the Browns at 44. I think I had him. What's swirling around out there? It sounds like there's character concerns there.
Absolutely. Let's go on. Let's get to 2. Sticking with Malik Willis going to the Lions.
Yeah, so the Lions have the second pick. They have the 32nd pick and a couple others in the first 2 days. And if they spend this second pick and that 32nd pick on non-quarterbacks, they are probably going to make the team better. Like they're going to improve the reps at 2 other starting positions probably. And in the process, they're going to make it harder to get a quarterback in 2023, assuming there's even one worth taking, which maybe
I'm not so sure, by the way. Like, I think we could have another kind of like crappy quarterback class next year.
Sometimes guys pop up. Like there are Zach Wilson cases, but that's not the norm. And if you pass on a player like Willis, reasoning that it's less risky to do that, it's too risky to take him, I would kind of encourage thinking about it more like, well, what is the risk that you're taking on that you don't get a good quarterback in the next 2 years? Are you sure this is the less likely way to not get a good quarterback in the next 2 years by passing now, making the team better so that you have to pay more to get to the same place in the draft order next year when there might not be a better option anyway? I think as much as there's a chance that Willis is, of course, a bust, there's also a chance that they just pay twice as much to get the same nothing next year. So I would take Willis if I were them. And even if they take Willis, they might want to trade back from that 32nd pick. It seems like they might have to do that, especially if they don't take Willis or some quarterback at that second pick, because like you better get multiple first rounders in 2023 if you think you're just going to buy whatever quarterback you think might be available, might be worth it. So they might want to trade back from the 32nd pick, get a 2023 first rounder from somebody or something like that, some ammo for the future. But they could, in my opinion, just make it simpler yet, take Willis at 2, let him redshirt this year if he must. They can cut or trade Goff to basically no cap penalty after this year. So that seems like the pretty obvious way to do it, I think.
Yeah, I like the way that you outlined that. And yeah, it would be, risky for the Lions to go down the avenue that you're laying out there and potentially leave themselves twisting in the wind next year if they're picking 9th overall and it turns out that Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are top 5 picks.
Well, that team, you have to worry about them overachieving, because they do that Dan Campbell brand thing where they play a lot harder than the team that's going against them. So the fact that they're not as good sometimes doesn't matter as much as you think it will. It wouldn't be shocking if they stumbled, kind of just accidentally go 8-9 or something, like it wouldn't be that hard. They can have a lucky season and in the process ruin their draft position to get a quarterback next year.
Yeah, totally. And again, I'm casting a little bit of early doubt on the legitness. That's a word.
Legitimacy
of next year's quarterback class. Next up, we got Evan Neal and Ike Ekwonu going 3 and 4 to the Texans and Jets, respectively. Trayvon Walker, 5 to the Giants. Here's where stuff gets pretty wild. So you have the Jets moving up from the 10th pick to 6. And I do like Carolina as a team, especially if Willis is off the board to move back. I think that I was looking at their draft capital.
It's so funny. They're so
do
bad.
Do they not have a day 2 pick?
They don't have a second, third, or fourth rounder, I don't think.
Yeah, so they definitely need to shop the hell out of that.
I don't even that team, man. The people running that team. What can you say? Anyway, they need to trade back. They have to. They don't have a choice. They're going to be like. They're going to. I don't know how to. I can't remember the last team that blew it. That just like ruined their entire team budget the way that the Panthers have right now. They need to trade back. Like, even if the quarterback they want is there, like they got to trade back. They have to.
Yeah, they're really the way that their draft set up now, and like I don't know if there's a guy at 6 that makes enough of a difference, especially if Willis is off the table to where it even comes close to compensating for the fact that they aren't going to be picking second, third, or fourth rounders. Like that's such a bad spot to be in. They need to just start accruing some draft capital, and they have the golden ticket to do it. Like the 6th pick, especially when so many other teams have multiple first-round picks to play around with and potentially package up. You need to be listening.
Yeah, I think someone might respond to the this just statement that the Panthers need to trade back. They might respond like, "Oh, well, what if nobody gives you an offer that's worth it?" And the answer to that is there's no such thing. Whatever the highest offer is, they have to take it. If their only offer is to go back to the 20th pick for a 5th rounder, they have to take it. It doesn't matter what the offer is. And they'll get a better offer than that too, is the thing. So they might have to take kind of like an unprecedentedly low offer to move back, but they do have to take it, I think. Like it would be bewildering to me, even as someone who expects them to do basically everything wrong. It would be shocking to me if they were stupid enough to stay at the 6th pick. The one thing about this particular scenario that I projected, the Deebo Samuel news could really undo the whole thing if he ends up going to the Jets, because it would be that 10th pick. Man, maybe they may have to trade the 4th pick, especially if Shanahan's, the way he often is. They might need to trade that 4th overall pick to get him. But in any case, I don't know if this particular trade-up scenario from the Jets will happen if Deebo Samuel is on the move, because I think the Jets have to be by far the favorite to go get him.
And I guess the free agent signing of Christian Kirk and the Jags picking up 1, that wouldn't really.
I mean, they should take a receiver. I think not should. I like Walker a lot, and Hutchinson would be fine. I don't think Hutchinson's bad or anything. I just think the attempts to equate him to like the Bosas and the Watts are basically desperate and sort of betray almost like insincerity. I don't think people think he's that good. He doesn't need to be that good, but there's just kind of like a myth about him at the moment, I think. So that's why I sound so much lower on him than most people. I think Walker would be fine. Hutchinson would be fine. So would a receiver. If they have to take Jameson Williams 1st overall, or even like Drake, I guess Drake London, that would be a bit high. But they really could use more receivers. And it does sound like Trent Baalke might blow it. Like he might go into this year with really like Christian Kirk and Zay Jones as their top 2 receivers, which I like Christian Kirk and Zay Jones enough too. But Christian Kirk needs to be in the slot, and you can't have Laviska Shenault outside. And if you have Zay Jones and Christian Kirk as your top 2 receivers, that's not really good enough. I need some speed on the field to clear out some room for those 2. And right now they don't have it. So if Trent Baalke takes Walker at 1 and then like Trey McBride with the 1st pick in the 2nd round, that would be the quick way to make another rough season for Trevor Lawrence, even though it'll be much better than it was last year, obviously. In any case, if Deebo Samuel does not get traded, I do like this scenario of the Jets moving up to Carolina to take some receiver.
And in this particular scenario, again, no Debo Samuel in this trade.
Yeah.
But the Jets moving up. We know that they're targeting speed. Jameson Williams.
Yeah, I think like we were talking about last week, my favorite bets to be the first receiver picked, especially for the odds, it's got to be Jameson Williams. And I don't like Drake London to go first. I like Drake London, and I think he'll go very high. I just don't think he's the serious candidate for that first receiver taken because I think people want that big playability, the excitement factor, and London is definitely more steady than exciting. But Jameson Williams and Garrett Wilson have the kind of explosiveness that I think teams might be more eager to pay up for.
Yeah, and do you think that at the end of the day, with the dust settling on Drake London not really doing much other than running routes at his pro day and obviously not putting down any real testing numbers, that just kind of locks him in as not the first receiver off the board?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if it's really for that specific reason, but on the other hand, if he had run at that pro day and he ran like a 4.48, then yeah, he would go. He should go first overall if he's that fast. I just don't think there's any reason to think he is. I think him not running is pretty much conceding. Like, yeah, I run a 4.6,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine. Amon-Ra St. Brown ran a 4.6, and he's not nearly as big as Drake London, and wasn't as
Right.
productive as Drake London either. So Drake London is still very good in my opinion. He'll never be a truly complete receiver in the sense of threatening all parts of the field. Like his downfield threat, I think, is very situational and probably dependent on like play action and setting up the double move over the course of a game. Whereas Jameson Williams can just take the top off the defense, even if it's trying to prevent that specific thing.
Yeah, 100%. And with Jameson Williams, obviously he doesn't have any testing numbers either. It didn't really hurt Jalen Waddle. We didn't have to wonder if Jalen Waddle was fast. We don't have to wonder
Right.
if Jameson Williams is fast. Looking at the odds right now for first receiver taken, Garrett Wilson, the leader in the clubhouse, at plus 135 is the best value that you're going to get over at PointsBet. But it's anywhere between plus 135 to plus 100 over at DraftKings. So it seems pretty clear that he's the leader right there. Drake London next up, plus 220 over at FanDuel, and then Jameson Williams plus 250 over at DraftKings. And then there's a pretty significant drop off to Treylon Burks, Chris Olave, both plus 2,000. So it seems like that there is a trio that has separated itself as far as where the first receiver's going.
Yeah. Not to backtrack too much, but I guess I just want to take the chance to mention one other thing that we might want to watch for would be the Raiders trading Darren Waller. And that could also upset a lot of, not upset, but just kind of reconfigure the picture of the demand and supply at receiver, route runners in general. So if the Debo Samuel part is one shoe that we have to wait to drop, Waller would be the other. And so, if either of those guys move, a lot of things are off the table. All bets are kind of off and things can all get renegotiated at that point. But if everybody's staying in place, I think I like even Burks to go in the top 20. Like Olave, I'm projecting here to go, 10th in a trade up from the Eagles. I think all of those guys, like we spent a lot of the draft, whatever dynasty football community has spent the past couple months kind of spending a lot of time litigating who's the best one of them and like why this guy's more, you got to get this guy, not this one, and things like that. And I just kind of am leaning toward the answer that they're all good. And I think since this isn't a spectacularly strong draft class, and since there's otherwise so much incidental wide receiver pass catcher demand right at this particular moment, I think it makes sense for all of those guys to go higher than we were projected and for all the picks to age fine.
So going back to the Waller detail, do you think that is something that I'll stop short of saying likely is to happen, but it's certainly like A, on the table, and then B, how would that change the Raiders strategy for this draft and where would be, not to put you on the spot too much, but where, what would some potential suitors be for a guy like Darren Waller?
Pretty much everybody should pay attention, in my opinion, when a player that good is available. And it probably wouldn't cost that much to get him because he probably wants a contract extension. Like, he's badly underpaid by the Raiders. He's almost literally paid like 40% of what he should be paid or something. So I haven't seen anything mentioning a holdout, but he would be insane to not hold out. And I would imagine he's already told the Raiders he wants a raise. So if they move him, the contract expectation would like reduce what they could get in a trade back, and yet it might be the best they can do in the situation. So they might give up Waller for, I don't know, like a second and a fourth rounder or something that's just not that difficult to justify if you're a team that considers itself a contender and kind of like one piece away. But Waller can play wide receiver reps, I mean, he played a lot of slot receiver as it was for the Raiders. I think he can line up everywhere, especially if you can get a certain matchup in a game. Like if you just see there's some 5'10" corner that they're leaving on him when they move him out wide, he can play receiver. He ran that 4.46 or whatever at like 6'6", 235 out of Georgia Tech, where he actually did play receiver. So even if you have a pretty good tight end, if Darren Waller's available and you're a contender, probably better. You gotta get a player like that if you think you're gonna win.
And sadly, it won't happen because they're in the same division. But Waller on the Chargers would be sick.
That would be pretty sick. And to again highlight their issue, he would be as fast as anybody on the field on that offense, even though he would be much bigger than nearly all of them. But yeah, there's very few scenarios where Waller is anything less than one of the most valuable route runners in the league, in my opinion. So Packers would make a lot of sense. A lot of any team that's like, we think we're going to throw the ball well this year, and we have anything other than an all-star at any of our main route running positions, that team could use Waller and should be paying close attention.
100%. Yeah, I think he's still got some really good years left in him. Absolutely. Before we get on over to the next part of our mock draft breakdown, quick word from our sponsors over at Blue Wire. All right, so moving on, Mario. So you got the Giants taking Garrett Wilson at 7. 8, I think, is a really sticky spot.
Yeah.
Atlanta is like the NFC version of Houston, where they need everything.
Yeah.
And I don't really know it. Like, obviously a lot has been made of the Falcons' completely empty wide receiver room right now. I mean, they have Kyle Pitts at tight end, but pass catcher, essentially, offensive weapon, and then nothing, just blatantly, just absolutely zero. And we've talked about like the likely receiver thirst that's going to be coming in this draft, where like all these receivers are going off the board. Do they lean into it and take one at 8 and then just try their luck to backfill their positions later in the draft? Or do you think that they move back or what's kind of your thought process for Atlanta and how they should approach picking 8 right now?
So I'm profoundly skeptical of this new GM that they have with the Falcons. The last one, Dimitroff, was terrible. I don't know if Fontenot is any better. I like the Kyle Pitts selection enough. I still think they probably should have took Fields. But I like Kyle Pitts a lot, so that's fine. The problem is all the other picks were terrible. What they did in free agency made no sense. Like their depth chart at running back and receiver last year, it was just abhorrent. Like it's insane that Christian Blake is playing any snaps at all for you. Like him and Frank Darby are like your 4th and 5th receivers, and Zacchaeus is your 2nd or 3rd. Just Tajik Sharp. What are you even trying to do here? It seems like you're trying to tank, and yet you don't trade Matt Ryan. Like, you can't tank if you have a quarterback like they did. They were bad, of course, but they didn't tank as much as they should have. They were better than they should have been for a team of their ambitions, and they just did everything stupid. At least they got rid of Julio Jones for a 2nd round pick, but that they were lucky that the Titans were willing to play ball on such a ridiculous scenario. If the Titans hadn't, they might have just held on to Julio, or like, I don't know, only gotten a 4th rounder or something. So the other draft picks, like I said, were terrible aside from Pitts. And so I'm kind of like being charitable when I project Drake London in this scenario, because Jameson Williams, Garrett Wilson being off the board is the main reason I'm projecting London there. Like, I think the Falcons could take either Jameson Williams or Garrett Wilson if they have that option. But if they don't, I also think Drake London would make a lot of sense. Not that Arthur Smith would confuse him for A.J. Brown, but he might confuse him for like a better Corey Davis. He might appreciate just the matchup option of having a 6'4", 220 starting receiver who you can feed with volume as a passer or as a pass catcher, and in the run game can give you good, just kind of like mass advantages on the outside because he's mostly being covered by like 190-pound corners. So London doesn't need to be a great blocker or anything to push guys around who are 30 pounds lighter than him and like a half a foot shorter than him. So I think he would fit in great with Atlanta, and he especially would have been a great fit with Matt Ryan. Marcus Mariota, I like him, but I think he needs more help than they're likely to give him. So I'm not super optimistic there, which leads to the next point. The Falcons have plenty of reason to be interested in a quarterback. I don't think Willis falls to them, but if he does, they should probably take him. If he's gone by then, they could trade back and take Ritter or I guess Pickett. Not that I would be a fan of the second option. So those are things that they could do if they don't stay at 8 and take a receiver.
Yeah. So, the big sense down here in Atlanta is always that if the Falcons are always going to be like bad, but just not bad enough to go ahead and get that like franchise changing player. So, they're picking 4th last year after a terrible year. Like they just like, I feel like a good summation is, am I getting a little choppy here? Sorry.
No, it might be me though.
Okay, but my screen's getting a little slow, but we press on. But like the play where Todd Gurley scored when he didn't mean to, or like when it was like suboptimal for the Falcons to do that, that just kind of like sums up these like post Super Bowl 28-3 years for the Falcons. Like that, just bad results. No, like basically even when they win, they lose type of thing. So
yeah, I thought it couldn't get worse than Dimitroff, but like I said, having that tank year last year while keeping Matt Ryan, like you trade Julio Jones and Matt Ryan, or you keep them both and you for some reason try to compete. What you don't do is try to get bad enough that Matt Ryan can't win you any games, but you also don't trade him or draft a quarterback with your first round pick. Like that's kind of the scenario that the Lions need to think about with Willis at the second pick. It's like, fine, let's say you get some kick-ass player with the second overall pick. Are you going to be happy to be in Atlanta's position next year where you're picking later and you still don't know what the hell you're going to do for the next 3 years?
Yep. To quote Mike from Breaking Bad, no half measures, but Falcons full of them.
He hates those.
Not a fan of half measures. That Mike guy, pretty serious fella.
One time he entertained it, but not since then, buddy.
Nay. So let's get on down the list a little bit. We got some defenders going after Chris Olave goes 10. We got Derek Stingley, Kyle Hamilton, a couple of really toolsy guys going to Washington and Minnesota, respectively. Jordan Davis to Houston with their 13th pick overall. Kayvon Thibodeau to the Ravens. I would not mind that. Then we got a couple of quarterbacks going. So Kenny Pickett to the Panthers at 15 and Desmond Ritter to New Orleans in a trade that's been traded a bunch, or a pick that's been traded a bunch, the 16th overall pick. Ritter to the Saints. I do like the idea of both these teams going after a quarterback in this draft, and I think that would be the relative sweet spot. Like I would hate Pickett at 6 to the Panthers. Pickett at 15, not bad.
Yeah, and it's they should have no delusions. Like even if they pull off this trade back scenario and get Pickett, they will not be competing. So toward that end, Pickett could be a decent, bridge experiment. A first round pick they were going to waste anyway. Maybe they keep themselves as a strong tanking finisher for the next 2 years, and they just kind of dispense with him like the Rams did Goff. Not extending him and then needing to trade 2 first round picks to get another team to take him. But just moving on, I don't know. It's a lot better, like you said, to get Pickett that late than at 6. I just think he's really bad. And so with the Panthers being a very badly run team, I think they make so much sense to take him. Maybe that's kind of like a wishful thinking thing. Like I'm hoping they take Pickett so that they don't ruin Desmond Ritter, whereas he might have a fruitful career at another more stable team, let's say the Saints. So yeah, I'm maybe that's just me hoping that this is like fewer casualties than the alternative.
Okay, all right, that definitely checks out, and yeah, the Panthers' current brain trust not really generating a lot of reason to be optimistic, to say the least. How would you feel about Ritter at 16 to New Orleans? Do you think that he's someone that could, I guess with Andy Dalton being there, what am I drawing too direct a parallel of Dalton just kind of being in the way for like the first month of the season, then Ritter taking over?
I don't know. I mean, it's tough to get quarterbacks. I think right. It's tough for anyway to get quarterbacks right than like running backs, receivers, and tight ends. But I think as far as the things that we can know, Ritter satisfies pretty much every concern. I mean, it's not like a Trevor Lawrence kind of thing where you look at him and it's just like, oh, this guy's a star. You can just see it immediately. You kind of have to try to see it a little bit. You have to like be patient with it and kind of let it come out over the course of the tape. And looking at his production, it's good that he improved as a 4-year starter, like steady improvements over 4 years. That's what Dak Prescott did, and he's not the same kind of athlete or build or anything as Dak Prescott, but just that thing where he showed up with a certain level of development and he steadily improved every year. Probably just by virtue of kind of his work ethic. It really is important to get a quarterback who's kind of obsessed with football, and if they have any sort of tools to work with, even if they're raw now, your best hope is still to take a guy like that and just hope that their work ethic leads to them figuring it out, especially when you got a case like Ritter's where he's shown signs of constantly figuring things out already. So I think he's a very easily justified pick for a team like the Saints. I know some people are pretty skeptical of him and consider him like a fringe first rounder or like a reach in the first round. I don't. I think he belongs in the top 20, and I think the Saints should take him.
I think that I could definitely be accused of maybe like projecting my thoughts on Cincinnati last year as a whole, onto Ritter specifically. You take his last college game against Alabama, like obviously that the offensive line in front of him had no shot of stopping, Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, like all those guys. But, Ritter other than, their scripts coming out of the first drive of the game and the second half, like, he couldn't do anything against that Alabama defense. What do you think is going to be different in the NFL, when you're facing like all Bama level guys, even better?
You don't go into that scenario with the Cincinnati team, though, and
right.
Not that you don't want to bank on outliers like this, but like you don't need to find the tape from Josh Allen's Oregon game to find results as bad as Desmond Ritter against Alabama. There really are some times where the supporting cast relative to the opponent is just so uneven that the whole sample is just contaminated, so
sure.
I'm hoping that's what happened there with Ritter. Alec Pierce is an NFL receiver, but that's about it. Like he didn't have receivers who were ready to go face to face with corners like those. So you would predict failure, you would hope for better than what he did. But I think especially when you're in the Saints position, it's like, you can bring him along slowly if you need to. And how bad could he really be if he's like a 4-year steadily improving starter, gives you some run flexibility. He's a very good, the 4.52, even if he adds 9 pounds and he's getting up to like 6'3", 220, he's still probably running a 4.6 flat at worst. So if he's not a great passer, then lean on his running ability. You can do that. He'll give you that at the very least. And his work ethic, his focus, his ability to like lead as a 4-year starter, I think all indicate likely growth too.
Yeah, I think those are all fair points. Now, I didn't mean to hang my one criticism on like a worst case situation like the Alabama game in the playoff. But I thought that there were other times last year where Cincinnati kind of sleptwalked against lesser opponents. And again, I don't want to like put all of that on Ritter specifically. And if anything, Ritter, pulled them out of the fire in a couple instances, like against Tulsa. But
yeah, it's a totally reasonable concern, and it's the reason why he doesn't really have any top 10 momentum. It's like he's one of those guys who you can see him failing, but it sometimes still makes sense to take him just because there is the good case scenario, and as a team, you kind of just gotta, you have to kind of just take one of the roads eventually and see where they go. And I think for the Saints, it's like, if not now, you're kind of just kicking the can down the road instead of figuring out anything.
Yeah, I think so too. So I do think that it would make sense for New Orleans to use one of their first rounders on a quarterback, and I think that Ritter probably a little bit toolsier than Kenny Pickett. So there's that. Other notable picks from your first round. We won't hang out too much longer here. We got to get rolling here soon. But
the running backs, if you're wondering, Breece Hall
where's
to
the first one?
Breece Hall to the Jets. And by the way, I don't feel strongly about either of the Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker projections here.
Oh, can you imagine the fits of the Michael Carter hive, though? Think of them.
There would be a lot of people ready to complain about that pick if it's made. I wouldn't. I actually think if you imagine a successful NFL offense and the amount of running that should entail, it's easy to see how there's room for both Hall and Carter to be productive in that case, especially when, as it were, you have a quarterback who you can't trust to get the ball to the receivers. So do you think they're just punting? That's the alternative, and it's fair to say, like, well, I guess so. But if you are not content with that, then taking Breece Hall makes a lot of sense because he can move the ball for you, and he can make Zach Wilson look better than he is. And he can't do everything. So especially if you're in a game where you're running, 75 snaps, you want to have a Michael Carter and a Breece Hall in that game.
No, totally. It's, I think it makes all the sense in the world. Like the days of like the true workhorse, getting 65+% of the carries, like pretty much gone.
Some guys can do it, and it's fine that there's a bunch who can't. And, it's good to have good players on the field, and it's unfair to expect Carter to play 70% of the snaps, and it's unfair to expect Hall to play 90%. He's not Todd Gurley, but him and a passing down specialist, not Hall can catch passes too. I'm specifically imagining an offense where he's catching like 50 passes and getting like 16 to 18 carries per game, and Carter's getting 8 carries, 3 to 4 catches. I think a team that's moving the ball, moving the chains, has plenty of reason to pursue both of those kinds of players.
And what this kind of made me think of, and obviously we hope for a different result for the Jets if this were to come to fruition, but reminds me a little bit of like the Browns setup where they just had an elite backfield that can kind of help smooth over some of the rougher spots of a high pick quarterback who's struggling to develop.
Yeah, Carter can take a certain number of reps, right? And let's say like 500 snaps, but they're probably going to run closer to like 1,200, 1,300 running back reps. And the sharp analytics guy thing apparently is to say, well, just have the other 800 reps be totally crap. Just put some bum out there. Who cares?
That is smart.
And I think that's a weird way to think of a football game. I don't know if a person who thinks of it that way has ever imagined a competitive scenario or been in one themselves. And like 800 reps, you're really okay with. You would rather have 800 bad reps than just push a button and get 800 good ones. That's strange, especially for a team that could use it. You're not just. It's not like every time you pass on a running back, you're automatically stocking up equity in some other area. You're probably just blowing it because you're the kind of person who can't see the reason 800 good running back reps is useful to an offense. So I think Hall would be a good pick there. Kenneth Walker, I project kind of a similar thing going to the Cardinals. And with that one, I was like, I don't know. I didn't feel strongly about that. I was like, I got to get Kenneth Walker somewhere, I guess. And they lost Edmonds, and Connor's injury prone, so maybe something. I don't know. But apparently the Cardinals are looking at receivers too.
Oh, then I'm so mad that I have to be disappointed. Like I used to be so enamored with the idea of this guy going to Kyler Murray in a Cliff Kingsbury offense. Like now it's quite the opposite. It's oh great, now
Cliff sucks. It should have worked. It should have worked. You were not wrong to be hopeful with that. It's Cliff's fault. I assume we'll get back at him someday.
Yeah, we will. We need to get Zach Kitley or whatever his name is, whoever the Western Kentucky offensive coordinator was, who's at Texas Tech now. We need to get him up the ranks and
we need to get some Big 12 coach who was probably fired 4 years ago because he's not a hot sunglasses wearing.
Yeah, doesn't have a cool bachelor.
And he gets fired when he goes 500 every year.
Yeah, he has more of like a male living spaces.
Doesn't get an NFL head coaching job for that. It turns out you gotta be the Instagram boy for that.
That's facts, man. Other kind of big takeaway: Packers. I think a lot of Packers fans would be very excited if things played out this way. Double tapping receiver. Who'd you give them?
I have them trading ahead of the Saints to get Treylon Burks, which if Deebo Samuel gets traded and Darren Waller gets traded, I should say, if either of those happens, I don't quite see the need at that point to trade up for Burks. Like the Saints could take Burks. That would make a lot of sense for them to do that. But particularly if like Olave is gone by 10, if 4 receivers are gone by 10, then the Packers need to trade up to get Burks, I think. And they cannot leave the first round without at least Burks. Like they just can't do it. And they kind of don't let themselves take other players who might be suitable options. Like they don't allow like sub 195 receivers traditionally. They should make exceptions even if they want that rule. Like in Olave should be a clear reason to make that exception, or Jameson Williams. Not that I expect them to be in that range, but Burks conventionally conventionally qualifies for what the Packers usually look for. So it's really easy to imagine them targeting him, be it in a trade up or at the 22nd overall pick. And even if they get Burks, they should take Pickens, I think, if they get the chance, because they're not going to be there. They won't consider Jahan Dotson, who would otherwise be a worth a pick there. So they got to get 2 receivers. They can't just go in like putting it all on Lazard. And I like Lazard enough.
Yeah. I mean that you don't want to like be the Falcons, but with a good quarterback like that almost like creates an uglier situation where like Rodgers, it just signs this new deal. It's all dramatic. And then it's like, you really just gave me nobody. Thanks.
They should take Burks and Pickens and then also still trade their second rounder for Waller or something.
I like where your head's at. Any other kind of notable things the listeners should be looking out for in your mock, or I'll just drop the link in the show notes and go read it.
Yeah, I project Trey McBride to go with first pick in the second round to the Jaguars. So him, Jeremy Ruckert, and Cade Otton I project in the second round, but nothing all that exciting about any of them in my opinion.
Okay, but at a certain point, tight ends will get drafted. Second round seems
that's for the 2 tight end league people right there.
Drop that in there for him. Much appreciated. All right, that's going to wrap things up for us here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Blue Wire. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.
Try RotoWire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/try.